Hello everyone, welcome to Split Second. My name is Sequeira, and before starting, I want to thank everyone for your support, comments and suggestions. In particular, the people on Reddit have been really great to us. Finally, since we got a few requests for a Discord channel, we decided to open one after last week's video. Check the link in the description, hop over, tell us your thoughts, suggestions and your favorite moments from the matches. While you're at it, consider subscribing and supporting us by doing so. Today I'm joined by Luís David Lopes and Balroy for more fun and C80H. Our commanders are Heliod, Suncrowned, a personal brew that mixes stacks, aggro and combo. Luís Brandão with his brew of Kroxa midrange. David Lopes playing a requested Tasigur Golden Control by Cinestra, and Balroy with Artichoker's Anje Filter. For our starting hands we have Bal as a starting player. He mulliganed once and didn't want to go deeper. He has a Gemstone Caverns, but since he's the first player he can't take advantage of it. 3 more lands that cover his colors, Shadow of the Grave, Volder and Pariah, and gives us Bidding. This means some filtering potential with Anje, but otherwise a pretty slow start. Me, also on a mulligan down to 6, keeping a slow hand of plains, land tax to keep me in the game, Fellow Stone for ramp, Hokori and Alms Collector to slug and stacks if things move favorably, a Sun Titan and an Elish Norn that I chose to send to the bottom of my library. Knowing that I'm against 3 combo players, it's not the best hand to have. Luís kept a slow hand focused on cutting off our resources through Liliana of the Veil, Pain Magnification and Sire of Insanity. He also has Entomb for a potential World Gorger Dragon reanimation, a Cabal Pit, a Blast Zone and a Felwar Stone. David mulliganed to 6 but found a scary combination of Flash and Hulk already in his starting hand, along with 5 lands. He doesn't have combo protection, but he might not even need it since he's not playing against decks with a lot of permission. He sent Yavimaya Coast to the bottom of his library. It's time to duke it out. Bal starts by playing a Prismatic Vista and passing his turn. On my turn, I play a Plains and tap it to cast land tax, hoping there's no mental misstep on David's hand to finish me off. After he resolved, I passed. Luís plays a Cabal Pit and also passes his turn. David puts down a Breeding Pool tapped and goes to his hand step. Bal cracks his Prismatic Vista for a snow-covered mountain and loses 1 life. It looks like it will be a slow game, folks. On his turn, Bal ponders not playing a land just to see if my keep was greedy. He decides to play a swamp instead and passes. Entering my upkeep, I immediately fetch for 3 basic plains and reveal them. Then I draw, play one of the plains and cast Felwar Stone before passing. Luís plays his Blast Zone. He then taps it and a Cabal Pit, taking 1 damage and playing a Cursed Totem. You can actually hear Bal's cries in the background. David plays a Command Tower and passes again. On his turn, Bal played a snow-covered swamp, basically telling us that his list runs Tainted Pact. That, or attacking our OCD. He then casts an unexpected Simian Spirit Guide because he didn't have anything better and casting Anje was pointless due to the Cursed Totem. He passes. On my turn, I decide to get rid of 3 more plains. I play one of them and go to my end step, discarding a Giver Runes and 2 basic plains. On his turn, Luís fails to draw a land. He takes 1 damage from the Cabal Pit and plays Felwar Stone, passing the turn after. David plays a Woodland Cemetery, which enters untapped. Then, in spite of me and Luís having mana available, he casts Flash. I respond by tapping for mana and casting Alms Collector, knowing that it's worthless against lines with Thassa's Oracle, but it was still my best shot. This means that David is able to play his Ulk, sacrifice it and fetch both Spellseeker and Thassa's Oracle. They both trigger when they enter the battlefield, and David resolves Spellseeker first to get Demonic Consultation. He casts the Demonic Consultation with Thassa's Oracle ETB still on the stack, naming Red Elemental Blast for kicks, and exiles his library. Then, the ETB trigger from the Oracle resolves and David wins the game. At this point, we're all complaining about how annoying Flash is. Plus, we still have about 3 hours of Magic ahead of us unplayed. So we do just that. We shuffle our decks, we re-roll to see who's starting, and we get to another game, this time hoping for a fighting chance against Tasigur, and without playing blue. It's time for round 2 with Luís starting the match. In his hand he has 3 lands, a swamp, a smoldering marsh and scavenging grounds. He has the possibility to cast a turn 1 Liliana the Last Hope thanks to Dark Ritual, possibly controlling the way the board grows. He also has a World Gorger Dragon, which isn't ideal because Kroxa has a harder time discarding it than Anje, and a Shenanigans for artifact interaction. David's hand is more balanced this time around, with a Mana Confluence, ramp in the shape of Birds of Paradise, Manifold, and Bloom Tender. He has 2 counter spells, Mental Misstep and Counterspell, and card draw from Heliod Adversary. He isn't facing other players with green permanents though. Bal has the potential for a turn 1 Anje cast, thanks to City of Brass, Chrome Mox, and if he's lucky and draws a land card, Mox Diamond. Tainted Pact and Necromancy are promising for an early combo attempt. Incorrigible Youths and Grave Scrabbler are mostly Madness Fodder for Anje. My hand is very aggressive against Anje's plans and some of Kroxa's. I have a Plains, a Ganjo Castle, fast ramp from Mana Crypt and Mana Vault, anti-combo with Spirit of the Labyrinth and Samurai of the Pale Curtain, and even a Disenchant which could be very damaging if either Rakdos players tries to combo with World Gorger. I predict a lot of cool twists and turns this match. Let's go! For his first turn, Luís decides to play conservatively, something he's still new at, and puts Smoldering Marsh into play tapped. He passes the turn. David starts the turn with the Mana Confluence, and plays Birds of Paradise. Afterwards, he passes. Bal starts his turn by paying 2 life and cycling Swamp Wraith to draw a card. He celebrates his next draw, dunking Badlands onto the battlefield. We all understand why he's so excited when he casts Mox Diamond, discarding City of Brass, and a Chrome Mox, exiling Grave Scrabbler. With that, he casts a turn 1 Anje, and the table's focus zones in on him. He activates Anje, filtering the Incorrigible Youths, Muckdrub, and Brain Gorgers, ending his turn. On my turn, I start by playing a Plains. Then, I cast Mana Crypt. I tap the Crypt and the Plains, casting Mana Vault and Spirit of the Labyrinth to try and limit Bal's options a bit. I pass the turn. Luís begins his turn by playing a Swamp. He then casts Shenanigans, destroying my Mana Crypt and making me protest about how mono white shouldn't be getting focused this early. He tells me to man up and passes. On his first main phase, David chooses to pay 2 life and cast Gitaxian Probe, choosing Luís because he had the most cards in his hand. He sees a Dark Ritual, Liliana the Last Hope, World Gorger Dragon, Scavenging Grounds, Sensei's Divining Top, and Cabal Pit. David's probing doesn't reward him with drawing a card because of Spirit of the Labyrinth. He then taps the Mana Confluence, losing 1 life, and plays Mana Vault. He uses the Mana Vault and the Birds of Paradise to cast Heliod Adversary. He passes the turn. Bal begins his turn with a Tainted Pact, and he immediately flips a World Gorger Dragon, which he decides to keep. Even with Necromancy in his hand, he can't win because Spirit of the Labyrinth doesn't allow Bal to draw his deck through the World Gorger reanimation. He decides to play a Shadowblood Ridge and pass to me. Now that it's my turn, I play a Ganjo Castle followed by Karn, Scion of Urza, so I can get card advantage over my own Spirit of the Labyrinth. I activate his +1 ability, choosing David to give me 1 of 2 cards from the top of my library to my hand. I reveal an Elesh Norn and an Arch of Araska. Figuring I was still too far off to play her, David gives me the Elesh Norn. I pass to Luís. Luís puts his Scavenging Grounds into play, making Bal sweat a bit. He then chooses to cast Kroxa, forcing us to discard a card. David discards Mental Misstep, Bal his World Gorger Dragon, and I discard a Settle the Wreckage. At this point, we're all counting on David to make sure Bal behaves. Luís finishes his turn by casting Sensei's Divining Top. During his upkeep, David loses 1 life to the Mana Vault. He then plays the Bloodstained Mire. He attacks my Karn with Heliod Adversary, and I resist the idea of blocking the attack using the Spirit of the Labyrinth, since that would allow Bal to win the game. He goes to his end step, and Bal discards Simian Spirit Guide to draw a card with Anje. Now that it's his turn, Bal casts Glinthorn Buccaneer, which he uses to attack Karn. I'm forced to let the damage resolve, and Karn goes to 2 loyalty. After that, Bal passes. I start by taking 1 damage from the Mana Vault during my upkeep. Then, I activate Karn, choosing David once again. I exile a Sword of Fire and Ice and a Linvala, Keeper of Silence. Linvala goes into my hand because it can also help with dealing with Bal. I then cast Samurai of the Pale Curtain, which acts as both protection for Karn and Graveyard Hate to prevent Worldguardian loops. After that, I pass. Luís plays his Cabal Pit. Without any great plays available, he looks at the top 3 cards of his library with the top afterwards. He then casts Playcrafter. When the Playcrafter triggers, Bal activates Anje, filtering a jeweled amulet. Luís sacrifices his own Playcrafter, David sacrifices the Birds of Paradise, Bal is Anje, and I decide to sacrifice the Spirit of the Labyrinth because I don't want to lose the resources from Karn. All creatures except Anje get exiled because of Samurai of the Pale Curtain. On Luís's end step, David sacrifices the Bloodstained Mire and loses 1 life, putting an Underground Sea into play. He takes the Mana Vault damage during his upkeep, draws a card, and goes to his attack step. He attacks Bal with Oakham Adversary, drawing a card for it. Afterwards, David passes. On his turn, Bal goes to his combat step and attacks Karn. I block with Samurai of the Pale Curtain, triggering our Bushido 1, which gives her +1/+1 until the end of the turn. Bal responds by casting Abandon Reason, giving his Buccaneer +1/+0 and First Strike, killing my Samurai, which exiles itself. And we go to my turn. I first take 1 damage from the Mana Vault. I use Karn's -1 to retrieve the Arch of Oraska so I don't miss another land drop. I use it to cast Ranger Captain of Eos, which can both protect Karn and stop some of my opponent's win attempts. Because I don't have enough mana to win through Balkan Ballista and Heliod combined, I instead use the Captain to get me a Serra Ascendant so I can move towards a solid board state. Then I pass. Luís casts Dark Ritual, passing priority. We all decide to let it resolve without responding. After the ritual resolves, Luís swaps his top with the first card in his library, taps the Smoldering Marsh and the grounds to cast Theater of Horrors, which is a payoff card when he gets infinite mana, just in case he cannot cast Kroxa from his graveyard or Kroxa is on the battlefield. Still floating double black mana, Luís taps out and casts Liliana the Last Hope. He uses her ability to give -2/-1 to the Oakham Adversary, taking David's draw for the next turn. Luís passes. David draws a card and passes his turn, unable to participate actively. Bal goes to his turn. He taps for triple black, casting Necropotence. I get some PTSD because I lost the game to the Necromancy Buccaneer combination very recently, and explained to the table how dangerous the two can be together. David tells me to calm down, loses 1 life to the Mana Confluence, and casts his counterspell. Bal goes to his combat, attacking the Liliana with the Buccaneer. Then, he lets me go to my turn. I take the Mana Vault damage yet again. Then, I activate the Karn and tell David he gets another chance to give me a good card. I reveal a Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, and an Emeria Sky Ruins. He gives me the Emeria since it's a slow land and nowhere near being active. I decide to play it and I go to combat intending to attack the Liliana. On my second main phase, I cast the Serra Ascendant. I pass. Luís exiles the Divining Top to the Theater of Horrors. He plays a Polluted Delta, cracks it, fetching for a basic swamp. He uses the Theater to ping Bal for 1 damage. Bal protests in response, saying that he always gets focused during our games. Luís agrees, then pings him anyway and casts the Divining Top. He passes. David loses 1 life to the Mana Vault in his upkeep. He attacks Brandon with the adversary, drawing a card. He plays a Command Tower and passes. We all get suspicious about his accumulation of cards. On his turn, Bal also starts by attacking Luís with the Buccaneer. He chooses not to filter a card, passing instead. On my upkeep, Mana Vault does its damage. This time around, I use Karn's ability but choose Brandon as the target. A Tragic Arrogance and Sol Ring get revealed, and the Arrogance is put into my hand. Wanting him to participate more, I attack David with Serra Ascendant, dealing 6 damage and gaining 6 life. Then, I cast Giver of Runes and pass my turn. On his upkeep, Luís exiles an Abrade to the Theater of Horrors. He then draws and casts an Animate Dead targeting Bal's Worldguardian Dragon. We look at the board, realizing he can win through the Theater of Horrors if the Animate Dead is successful. David responds by casting Brainstorm. He passes priority, which isn't a good sign. Bal decides to respond. He casts an Entomb and buries an Archfiend of Spite. With Animate Dead still on the stack, Bal decides to flash a Necromancy, targeting his own Worldguardian Dragon. doesn't win him the game, but it stops Luís and could net him a flying 6/6 demon with annoying abilities. I pass priority to Luís, who responds by activating the Divining Top. Then, we all let the Necromancy resolve. The World Gorgia Dragon enters the battlefield, triggering an Exile All Other Permanents You Control ability. I decide to respond to the trigger and pretty much take one player out of the game. I cast Disenchant, targeting the Necromancy. The Necromancy goes into the graveyard, triggering and forcing Baal to sacrifice the dragon. When the dragon dies, he triggers a return the exile cards under their owner's control. Because no cards were exiled yet, the ability resolves and nothing happens. Finally, the stack gets to the point where Baal is forced to exile his remaining permanents from the game, and Animate Death fizzles. Okay with not being the one without permanents on the battlefield, Luís passes his turn. David takes 1 damage from the Mana Vault during his upkeep. He plays a Tarnished Citadel before going to combat and attacking Luís with Occam Adversary and drawing a card. David then goes to his second main phase, casting Felwar Stone followed by Bloomtender. He passes. Baal draws a card and passes to me. Things are looking dark on his side of the table. I take 1 damage from the Mana Vault. I use Karn to retrieve a Soul Ring, which I then cast, getting the City's Blessing from the Ark of Araska. I go to combat and attack David with my Serra Ascendant. On my second main phase, I tap for 4 mana with the Soul Ring and cast Gideon of the Trials. I immediately get his emblem, stopping my opponents from winning the game without interacting with Gideon first, so I pass the turn. During my end step, Luís activates the top. Luís starts his upkeep by exiling a Stranglehold to his Theater of Horrors. He taps for 5 mana, taking 1 damage from the Cabal Pit, and casts a Final Parting, setting up his next turn for a potential win. Vilis goes into his graveyard, while another card goes into his hand. With that, he passes the turn. Somewhat concerned with the amount of mana on his side of the table, I respond to David's Mana Vault trigger by sacrificing Ranger Captain of Eos and stopping him from casting non-creature spells during his turn. My main concern was my susceptibility to a Wrath, knowing that for him to win, David would need to have assembled his win cons and have a way to deal with Gideon. David takes the Mana Vault damage. He plays Spellseeker, picking up a Flash. He then attacks the Gideon with Occam Adversary. I don't mind letting the Planeswalker go down to 1 this turn. David passes. Baal draws a card and passes to me. I take the Mana Vault damage. Then I play a Plains. I use Gideon to stop Occam Adversary from dealing damage and drawing more cards until my next turn. Then, I uptick the Karn and choose Luís once again. Leonin Arbiter and Blind Obedience are revealed. The Arbiter goes to my hand. Judging from how he played Spellseeker, I reckon David either has a consultation or has a way to get it anyway, so I decide to cut off his Bloomtender with Linvala, Keeper of Silence, instead of casting the Arbiter. I attack David with the Serra Ascendant, getting him dangerously low on life points. I pass to Luís. Luís exiles a Bitter Ordeal with his Theater of Horrors. He then tries to win the game by casting Dance of the Dead and targeting the World Gorgia Dragon. Because Theater of Horrors can also damage Planeswalkers, Gideon will not be enough to stop him. David casts a Pact of Negation to try and stop Luís. Luís stops to think for a bit on David's options since he used Spellseeker to pick up a Flash. He decides to go all the way and counter the Pact with a Red Elemental Blast. Without any other counterspells in his hand, David lets the Dance of the Dead resolve, and we're all looking towards the end of the match. When the World Gorgia enters the battlefield and triggers the Exile All Permanents You Control ability, Luís taps his Swamp in response. David stops the clock again once he gets priority from the World Gorgia trigger. He casts a Demonic Consultation and names Abrupt Decay, making things extremely exciting. He exiles the top 6 cards of his library, revealing City of Brass, Vampiric Tutor, Narset, Parter of Veils, Yavimaya Coast, Bayou, and Watery Grave. With that, he starts exiling from the top of his deck until he finds the Abrupt Decay. He exiles roughly another 20 cards for the consultation, none of them a winning condition, before finding the Decay. He casts it, losing 1 life to the Mana Confluence, targeting the Dance of the Dead. Luís responds by losing 1 life to the Cabal Pit and activating his top. He then swaps it with the top card of his library. The Decay resolves, forcing Luís to exile his permanents just like Baal did. Go big or go home. With his floating black mana, Luís manages to cast a Reanimate on his Vilis. When Vilis enters the battlefield, Luís loses 8 life to the Reanimate and draws 8 cards. He then decides to play a tapped Blood Crypt and go to his cleanup. He discards World Gorger Dragon and Faithless Looting. David takes 1 damage from the Mana Vault. He's in a pretty tight corner now. He casts Oko Thief of Crowns, uses it to try and turn my Giver of Runes into an Elk. With my next turn in mind, I cast Eerie Interlude in response, hold priority to use Giver of Runes and give Linvala protection from black, and then I exile both the Giver of Runes and my Serra Ascendant until the end of the turn. David loses another life from the Mana Confluence to cast Flash. We know Gideon stops David from winning the game, so we're wondering what he has in mind. David fetches Deathrite Shaman, Priest of Titania, Gilded Drake, and Elves of Deep Shadow. He trades the Drake with the Villis since it's an 8/8 with Flying and Trample. He passes the turn, so my Giver of Runes and Serra Ascendant return to the battlefield. Baal starts his turn by drawing and playing a snow-covered mountain. He is almost back in the game. On my turn, I take 1 damage from the Mana Vault. I then play the first card Karn gave me, which is an Elesh Norn. It wrecks David's board and puts me even closer to the finish line. I use Karn's ability and choose Baal, revealing Audric Lunarch Marshal and Remorseful Cleric. Audric goes into my hand. I don't want to kill David since that would return Villis to Luis's board. I choose to attack David with my Serra Ascendant and Yoko with Linvala. If Serra Ascendant hit David, he would lose the game, so he blocks it with Villis. Oko and Villis both die. On my second main phase, I use Gideon's ability to prevent all damage from the Gilded Drake. I pass the turn, hoping that I've done enough to win the game. On this turn, Luís casts Duress. I reveal Angel's Grace, Lenin Arbiter, Okari Drinker of Dust, Audric, and Tragic Arrogance. My Angel's Grace is discarded before Luís passes. David takes the Mana Vault damage. He plays a Tropical Island. He delves to cast Tasigur for 1 mana and then casts Windfall. David has 1 card in his hand, an Isochron Scepter. Baal discards 3, I discard 5, and Luís discards 7. We all draw 7 cards, and then David passes. Baal draws a card. He plays a Command Tower before passing to me. On my upkeep, I take the Mana Vault damage and play a Plains. I tap 5 mana and cast Angel of Jubilation to boost my board and stop some of the few remaining shenanigans. With my remaining mana, I cast Sensei's Divining Top. Finally, I cast my commander, Heliod. I decide it's time to take David out of the game with my Serra Ascendant, while Elesh Norn and Linvala attack Luís. David responds by casting Drown in the Loch. I use Giver of Runes to give the Ascendant protection from black. Luís blocks my Elesh Norn with the Gilded Drake and takes 6 damage from Linvala. The Serra Ascendant takes David out of the game. Gaining life from the Serra Ascendant, Heliod triggers and I give Elesh Norn a +1/+1 counter. On my second main phase, I use Gideon to stop Blood Crypt from dealing damage and I pass. On his turn, Luís plays Blast Zone and Arachna's Signet before passing. Now that it's his turn, Baal casts Rite of Flame, while floating red mana. He plays a Swamp, taps it for mana, and casts Violent Eruption, taking out Gideon, so the emblem stops being a problem. Then, Baal passes the turn. On my upkeep, I respond to the Mana Vault trigger and use the Divining Top. I take 1 damage from the vault and draw a card. I start by playing a Plains. I play Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, and then reveal a Rest in Peace in my hand. Because I can take out Luís with 1 attack and Baal has no way of recovering from my Rest in Peace, they decide to give me the Sun Crown for this game. Thanks for following us through these 2 matches, we had a lot of fun playing them. If you want to talk with us about the games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. If you want to go through other Commander adventures with SplitSecond, click one of the videos on the right. And don't forget to support us by subscribing. Join us again next week for a new set of Commanders and more decisive plays. See you then!